countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome back to the last comic shop, where we open up the shop to newbies in order to help them find their way under that comic book tent, as well as keep the lights on for the oldies trying to level up by, reading and actually talking about some comics. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson, and if you're wondering where my co-hosts, J.A. Scott and Chad Smith are, well, I gave them the week off. Aww. And why, you might ask? Well, a couple weeks ago, we took a visit to the Last Comic Shop archive vault, and we had such an overwhelming response from our fan base that I thought it might be neat to go back again and listen to one of those older shows from the dim past. So let's go ahead and get that vault opened now and see what we have inside. Now, as I mentioned the last time we visited the archives, a lot of fans might not know that Chad, J.A., and I have been reviewing comics via podcast for a very long time. Long before the first episode of The Last Comic Shop ever aired. And as a result, we've got a lot of great past reviews that definitely deserve a listen by all our new fans. Especially those that have been listening to our show for quite some time. I mean, some of our read pile reviews that we do often come from other books that we've read in the past, like Jonathan Hickman's X-Men series, which we've been actually covering quite a lot of the books over the past couple of years since its inception back in House of X, Powers of 10. So on today's program, I thought that we would go back and we take a look at one of those books from that series. It is the X-Men versus a Fantastic Four that was written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Terry Dodson. We reviewed it when it was first released about a year ago. Now, for those that pay attention to our show, you might see some minor differences with this episode versus our traditional show, such as the rating scale has been replaced by a grading scale, and there's not really a set recommendation section. But what hasn't changed is our general philosophy of bringing folks into the comic book tent. So let's go ahead and rev up that old Archive Rama 3000 and revisit that time when J.A., Chad, and I talked about the world's greatest comic quartet, the Fantastic Four, matched wits against the newly independent mutants from Krakoa. I know you have some other conversation topic that you'd rather get us on, so you've been dying to talk about it. Let's hear it.
I am all about that omnibus life these days.
I know!
I received my Silver Surfer omnibus in the mail. My Savage Sword of Conan omnibus is shipping as we speak, should be arriving any day now. So there's a lot to love about this omnibus. I'm still a bit annoyed that it's got a misprint on it. I think a book that costs $100, Marvel should do a better QC job with that. And since I ordered it from Amazon and I live in the Philippines, I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and eat the fact that I've got a page with missing panels.
Well, I know that Chad has often talked sometimes about some of those collections and the way that some of the times they get the coloring wrong. Didn't you have an issue with like a Walt Simonson book that had the coloring all wrong? Because
that's modern comics. So what they do is they used to print comics on garbage newsprint. They didn't have all those Ben-Day dots, the four colors. And so whenever they were doing these fancy collections, they go through and they recolor it. And they make it so it's not just those little dots. And the dots look so much better in my mind. Like, whenever they go through and they gussy it up, I'm like, no, that's not what this is. And
I would agree with that. Yeah, because a lot of the artists who colored those old comic books, they colored it with knowing what the constraints of the printing was going to be.
Exactly.
So they did you're losing some of the art, essentially.
Yeah, those were artistic choices. And I've got to be honest, the omnibus life is totally foreign to me. Because, one, I can't have nice things. Those omnibuy are just too nice and too fancy. And then two, they're so big. That's why I read comic books, is because I like things that, take 15 minutes and then I'm out. An omnibus, you look at that, it's like 6,000 pages. Like, that would take me 6 years.
Wow.
But they make for such good weapons. You can just crack somebody over the head with it. They start stealing stuff. You're like, here's Winter Soldier right to the face.
Yeah, they're furniture unto themselves.
You have a couple at least, right? Like, would you say that?
Two. One I bought accidentally because I borrowed one of yours and my dog ate it. So I'm
That's
like,
true.
I bought this one.
I have a couple. I have several. I have like Atlantis Attacks, Acts of Vengeance. I haven't read a lick of them. I got to agree with Chad, but they're really nice. They sit there on my shelf. I think my favorite one is the Immortal Iron Fist, and that's really good. I've actually read that one. But J.A., you follow this guy or these two guys that just do all the omnibus life now?
There's this guy on YouTube called Gem Mint Collectibles who reviews omnibuses. He buys and reviews omnibuses. He's got a massive omnibus collection. He looks like Everlast. So he's got tats all over himself,
90s.
but from the 90s, yes. I think somebody even thought he was Everlast. Like, dude, I loved your music. It got me through some hard times. Because people ask him, how can he afford all these omnibuses? When you see, like, his studio, it's just wall-to-wall library of omnibus, and not just Marvel stuff. He's got DC stuff, whatever DC calls their omnibus collection. I think they call it something else. But he got me into it, and basically he'll take a book, he'll open it, he'll flip through the pages, he'll talk about the art a bit, he'll show some panels off, he'll say, what it covers, what its stories is. He's very approachable about it, so he's not like making sort of critical comments, oh, this is a crap story or this isn't a good story. He's very pro omnibus or pro, the comics. If you're really into this storyline or, like, he goes through the original Infinity Gauntlet omnibus. He goes, it's great because it doesn't just show you Infinity Gauntlet. It's got some run-ups. It's got the tie-ins. So if you're really into the cosmic stuff, here's Silver Surfer 34 or 35.
I love the run-up to Infinity Gauntlet way more than the actual story itself.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. Thanos' Quest, that is a much better, and it's only 2 issues, so you're in and out of it. Like, well, who cares once he gets the gauntlet? It's all about him getting the gauntlet. That's the more interesting story. Anyways, go on.
He really inspired me to make the purchase and go down the omnibus route.
So other than the Silver Surfer and these 2 Savage Sword of Conan books, what's another omnibus did you have on your menu for?
They're reprinting the Infinity Gauntlet, and then I'll probably branch out, maybe looking to get an X-Men one or the Frank Miller Daredevil.
If you're looking at X-Men, I know that there's a great omnibus out there. Roy Thomas, Neil Adams run of X-Men in the late 50s, where they brought Havoc in, and then they fight the Sentinels again. It's got all that wonderful Neil Adams art. So, like, that's
a great omnibus for you to skip and just get the Claremont Byrne.
Shut up! I'd rather have the Neil Adams, Roy Thomas stuff any day.
I will say, before we go too far away from the omnibus stuff, those are like huge collector's things, J.A. Where print them for a short period of time and then
they stop, and then you can't find them, and then the volumes, like, I'm trying to find Savage Sword of Conan #1, and it's selling on eBay for like $300. Like, forget that.
And it's weird too, because the reprints, like, why is this that much? But there's a crazy thing going on with comics right now where all the speculators, it's like the mid-90s again.
Yeah. I've always got my finger on that speculation pulse.
No, honestly, if there's a new character that's introduced, people are going crazy. I subscribed to the new Thor book, and when issue 5 came out, if I didn't subscribe to it, I wasn't going to get it because it was selling for $30, $40 on eBay the same day. Punchline character and Batman that people were going ape over, and I'm like,
sounds like a Gold Lantern.
Yeah, no, the Gold Lantern stuff too.
But I will say, the production on this Silver Surfer omnibus versus the old Marvel Masterworks, which I used to have, which I think Andrew has mine, is so much better. They've reshot all the original art. They didn't recolor them. They just cleaned up the color a bit. And they just look fantastic. The blacks are so black that it just looks a lot better than original Marvel Masterworks versions.
There you go. Oh, and one thing that probably won't be coming out in an omnibus anytime soon is House of X and Powers of 10, although you never know what.
I think they are coming out in an omnibus. Sooner rather than later.
Sooner rather than later. But on today's program, we're actually going to start off our comic book talk by revisiting a Read Pile review from several months ago. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we had J.A. go back and read those 12 issues. But we made him do that because we're going to be covering what is somewhat of a sequel. I don't know. I think everything that came after House of X, Powers of 10 is kind of a sequel. Whether you're reading Marauders, whether you're reading Excalibur, whether you're reading this Swords of 10 or whatever. This is just another one of those kind of spin-offs from Hickman's idea that somebody took and said, all right, I'll run with the ball for a little while.
I don't think they're sequels so much as they are just branches and offshoots.
Yeah. But I mean, this one I think particularly fits in really well. And I don't honestly, other than maybe Marauders, I don't know if you need to read anything else other than House of X, Powers of 10 to kind of understand what's going on in, what is it, X-Men versus Fantastic Four, or is it Fantastic Four versus X-Men?
It's X-Men plus Fantastic Four.
Ah, I see.
Plus sign.
Okay. And it's a book I've wanted to cover on this particular program for some time. We actually were going to do this as a read pile way back in, I think, May. It might have been even April. And I've wanted to do it because it has two great talents. Chad, who wrote this book and who drew this book, which is one of the reasons why I picked it.
Okay, so Chip Zdarsky was the writer. And you have Terry Dodson on pencils with his wife Rachel Dodson, and a handful of other inkers also pitched in. Ransom Getty, I think it was Derek Vines, and there's one or two more that just pitched in along the way.
And real quickly, the 10-cent synopsis for this particular book is, as they kind of teased, I think in the first issue of House of X, sooner or later, Charles Xavier in his infinite wisdom or infinite plan, or however you want to call it, to get everybody, all the mutants to Krakoa, decides that, yep, there's one mutant out there that we kind of sort of need, and that's Franklin Richards, one of the most powerful mutants on the entire planet, an Omega-level mutant with the ability, at least in the old days, to manipulate reality. He was so powerful. He could create universes. That's his power set. And so they want him on Krakoa for what they think is altruistic reasons. So they obviously have to go and get him from the Fantastic Four. Now, this happens after the Fantastic Four have been away, and as a result, Franklin and Valeria have aged. Like, they're now, like, I don't know exactly how old they are in terms of teenagers.
Yeah, they're older teenagers, though.
Yeah, they're like 15, maybe 16 years old. Definitely under the age of 18, but old enough to be, to be kind of starting to think for themselves and make their own decisions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it becomes a battle between the Fantastic Four, who really kind of don't want to give up their son, that really don't trust what's going on with Xavier and Magneto and everything at Krakoa. And the mutants, who feel like it's their obligation to bring Franklin to the tent, or at least give him the option. And in all this, Franklin's losing his powers, and Dr. Doom sees an in to kind of not only turn this whole situation to his advantage, but maybe tap into some of those powers, maybe show up Reed Richards, maybe show up Charles Xavier, just do all those kind of things that Dr. Doom likes to do. Just mind with everybody. Like, that's what he likes to do. He likes to just have his manipulation games. And so we've got some classic Doom. The last thing I'll say about it, it's kind of follows a lot of the same plot lines. Fans of the original Fantastic Four versus the X-Men book that was released in the 80s.
Like when Kitty was trapped in her phasing thing and you didn't know if she was going to make it out of there. Like, you really felt for Kitty in that book.
Yeah.
They play on that here with, the emotional connection between Kitty and Franklin.
Absolutely.
Which I loved.
It's interesting because in that book, Reed Richards also kind of has a screw-up moment where, like, there's this notion that maybe he didn't fully foresee that there would be an accident with the space rocket or whatever, and that they would get the powers on purpose or whatever, and things kind of pissed off at him. And he kind of does the same thing here, in which he creates a device that turns off Franklin's mutant gene for a few seconds so that he can't run through the gateway, which kind of pisses a lot of people off. But anyways, that's the 10-cent synopsis, and we are getting into the book now. And I thought I'd start off with my cousin J.A., because not only did he want to talk about Fantastic Four, but he didn't really get to talk much about House of X and Powers of 10. And as a longtime X-Men fan, I wanted to hear his take on that first. So, J.A., what was your take on first House of X, Powers of 10?
I liked it. I didn't think it destroyed or like threw all the old continuity out in the bathwater. I thought it was an interesting twist, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out because, I mean, it's an X book, so you know that all these grand plans are going to get messed up somehow. I really like the idea of Moira McTaggart having this weird Omega-level mutant power. You know that Krakoa at some point is going to turn evil. I mean, that's just a given.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Also,
they already planted those seeds.
Yeah. No pun intended.
Yeah, sorry.
And then you know that something's going on because Moira has no desire to see Destiny come back. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think you brought it up in some of the pre-talk about how kind of went along with Chad, where they're basically able to clone the people and bring them back to life and everything like that. And I feel like that's going to come back and kind of bite everybody in the ass in the end. It's kind of like that notion that, like, immortality is never free. Like, you got to pay the piper eventually for messing around with nature the way that they're doing. And there's going to be some consequences later on. But that's the great thing about Hickman writing. You got like 6 or 7 years to figure all that shit out, and probably another 100 issues.
Before we hop off of the House of X stuff, what did you think about how they handled Xavier? And because it was a big shift.
Yeah, it's a big shift, but I think in the context of the book, where he basically sees all the different lives that Moira has had, it changes who he becomes. But he's a real dick in the book, and And I think this is another long play, which is why I could kind of accept it, it goes to the whole nature versus nurture. Because, does at some point when all of these grandiose plans start to fall apart and Krakoa turns evil or this cloning goes bad or, whatever is in store, how will Professor X react to all that? Will he revert to like the Professor X of old, or will he continue to go on this more Magneto-esque path? That's what I find interesting. And I think it's one of those long game plays. But right now, and it extends to this book, he's a dick. They're all dicks. In fact, in this book, I've got a list of 5 people that I thought actually come out sort of looking all right in this book, and everyone else is just not so good. So I've got a list in order of decency. You've got Franklin, Kitty, Valeria, Sue, Dr. Doom, and then everybody else.
Wow.
Okay, so there's a couple things there, because with the whole Sue Storm thing, and this started in House of X, Powers of 10, when they first meet the X-Men. And Sue Storm, you're talking about how they turned her into a badass. She's very Mama Bear, to the point where she's a little irrational. When she sees the X-Men show up, like, the hair on the back of her neck rises up, and she goes a little bit crazy. And so I don't know if I would put her in the, she's in the positive camp here. She's just as big a dick as the rest of them.
Yeah, I'm surprised you actually didn't put the Thing on this list, because, again, the Thing for me is always, like, he's the moral compass of any book. Like, the Thing barely ever does anything really wrong. Like, he always has a head on his shoulders, and he can always kind of see through people's bullshit. I like in this book a couple times when he calls Reed out on, like, because we all have had moments like that, and we all wish that we had a friend like Ben Grimm to be like, look, I'm still going to be your friend, but you're an asshole right now. And I'm just saying, you got to think about what you're doing just at this exact moment. Not like long term, but right at this exact moment, you're not exactly right, and you got to make it right. And so, like, he has a couple of moments like that with everybody, whether it's Reed, whether it's Professor X, whether it's Magneto. He sees through all of this.
Yeah. How heartbreaking was that scene with Franklin, where they're sitting down and they're talking about Reed, And like, yeah, Reed's a dick, but like, why is it the only two people he can't fix are the two people closest to him?
Maybe he's not trying. Maybe subconsciously he's not trying to do it. Yeah, I forgot about Thing, actually. Maybe I have to swap out Thing for Sue. I guess because it's always just a couple of panels here or there, one word balloon or something where he's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have put tracking devices on your kids, Reed.
Yeah.
Right. But
that's the thing they sell now in real life.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Doctor Doom, because again, you know that Doctor Doom is one of my favorite characters of all time. Like, he is probably maybe number 2 overall of my favorite comic book characters ever. Just because I think he's just so super complex and there's so many good stories you can tell with him. And it's interesting that you put him in the good person camp, because I was reading it too, and I was just like, you know what? Doom's got scruples. Like, I don't know what he's trying to do here, but like, he's not exactly all bad. It's like,
I mean,
it's about me, but through issue 3, I was on Team Doom.
Yeah,
like,
I guess issue 4, there's a bit, Doom gonna be Doom. So I just chalk that up to Doom gonna be Doom. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but through issue 3, man, Doom was doing his thing, and he was much more rational than Sue or Mr. Fantastic, and head and shoulders above Charles and Magneto, and basically saying, look, you want to do what you want to do with Krakoa, I get it, but you know what? I'm not recognizing your sovereign ability to just have impunity anywhere on Earth. Okay, people who are mutants in Latveria are Latverians first. Mutants second. So they're my people as well as your people.
And it's interesting, like one of my favorite lines that Chip writes in this entire book actually comes out of Doom's mouth, which is, again, I'm going to slaughter the line, but it's pretty much saying like, hey, I built everything out of my bare hands, whether you were born with your powers. Like, I had to build stuff, dude. Like, I had to make myself into something, as opposed to things that were just handed to you, Charles, on a silver platter. You want to come in here. And I was just like, dang, Doom, you tell him what's up. Because honestly, it's really hard, and I'm going to throw this question out to both of you in terms of the initial thoughts. Who is the bigger dick in this story, Charles or Reed?
They're all dicks.
Yes.
But who's the bigger dick?
Well,
who's the bigger wang in this story? I say it's Charles. I say Charles, since House of X, Charles has become literally the most insufferable asshole I have ever read in comic books. Sincerely. Like, it's hard to think of a guy that I would like, oh man, everything that comes out of your mouth is just like, I want to pop you in the face, because it's just not right.
Okay, I have a couple of thoughts, and I have one I want to come back to, so don't let me totally skip off this. But I think Charles is at least a focused, insufferable asshole. You know what his objectives are, and you may not agree with them, but like, if you were in that position, and that's the side you've decided after all these, seeing of all the possibilities, that's the side you're going to take, you could almost abide what Xavier is doing. Not saying it's the right thing, but you can understand why he's doing it. Whereas Reed is always an insufferable dick and doesn't care. He's so lacking in humanity. I know, Andy, you and I go back and forth on this all the time. He's the ultimate bad guy. And the fact that they have him as one of the greatest heroes of the Marvel Universe, like, no, this guy is a jerk. He could be out healing all these people. And it was in Zdarsky's life story, where Peter Parker confronts Reed Richards. And he's like, think of all the good you could have done instead of just making, unstable molecule costumes and gallivanting around the multiverse. If he just sat behind a desk and solved the world's problems, things would be so much better. But Reed is the ultimate bad guy, and he does these things time and time again, and we're just like, nah, he's Reed being Reed.
Well, I think Chip hit the nail on the head with that, though, with this Reed being Reed. I honestly think sometimes the reason why he hasn't figured out how to fix the Thing, how he can't fix Franklin Richards, is the same reason why he was just like, yeah, I built this device that would shut off mutant powers, but I didn't think that it could be used to do that. I just wanted to stop my kids from running through a portal. I honestly think that sometimes with Reed, the elevator doesn't go to the top floor. He's the smartest guy on the planet, but I think there's certain writers that say, like, nah, his elevator just doesn't get there all the time. He comes up with these brilliant ideas, but he doesn't fully understand what he's doing. He's like a kid with a handgun sometimes. He's just like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know about
much more dangerous than a focused Charles Xavier, though.
Oh, but I understand the haphazard nature. Yeah, maybe you could say that. But I still think that, like, the cold, calculated nature of Professor X right now. Oh, man, it gives me shivers to think what he's capable of. And he comes in at the end and mind wipes Reed Richards. First off, again, why didn't Reed Richards think that was going to happen? Like, he was on the Illuminati for, within God's sake. He should have an anti-Charles Xavier ray somewhere around his laboratory that he already built because he knew about that happening. But again, that's why I think his elevator doesn't go to the top floor. J.A. hasn't said a lick about this. Who do you think's a bigger dick?
Oh, I don't know. They're both dicks. I just don't like Professor X. I don't think it's Professor X. It's some clone of something, whatever. I don't know. But it's all a long game. I'm sure that Mr. Fantastic already has some sort of memory backup that's going to be taken care of for that whole Professor X showing up and forgetting it. But I was going through those last pages of the issue trying to find that quote that you had for Dr. Doom, and I came across those pages again. And I got to say, Professor X is the bigger dick. He's just a dick through the entire book. In fact, I did not enjoy this series nearly as much as I enjoyed the House of X Powers of 10 series. I wasn't a super fan of the art, for one. I actually liked the writing. I really liked the Kitty Franklin storyline. I liked the Doom storyline. I'm just not a big fan of the X-Men. What's become of Professor X? I think Doom's has the most level head on his shoulders from a political standpoint, where he's basically saying, take your superiority complex and get out of here. You're on my country's soil. You can't just come in and do whatever you want anywhere in the world anymore. Not everyone believes what you believe, so f*** off.
Yeah.
And you know what? I kind of have to agree with him.
Chad, so he kind of started this down the pike, but compared to, which one did you like more? Did you like House of X, Powers of 10, or did you like this Fantastic Four book?
Well, it's tough because there's nobody to root for in either of the books. And so the one point I wanted to bring up with Charles Xavier now is it's so unnerving with him with that mask where he has his eyes covered.
Yes.
And, especially the way his powers work. Like, he's not giving you anything. He can take everything away from you, and he's not giving you a single clue as to what he's thinking or feeling, or, like, you don't get the reaction in the eyes. You don't get to see the soul that's in the eyes and the character. All that is just wiped away. And, I genuinely believe the X-Men are bad guys now. I've always thought Mr. Fantastic was a bad guy. I think Doom is just a pretty awesome bad guy. And Franklin, poor Franklin, he's just caught up in between all these different things. And it's so fun for me to watch the relationship between Valeria and Doom. Yeah. She's a little bit evil.
She's not evil. She's spunky.
She's
got them all. She's got them all wrapped around her finger, and that's why I think I agree with you. X-Men are evil, and this long play, it's going to come down to basically Kitty Pryde's going to do something because she's the one that can't go through the portals. Why can't she go through those portals?
She's limited by somebody, either Professor Xavier or Emma Frost or somebody.
And there's a reason for it, because I think that they know if she goes through the portal, she's going to be able to discover something, because her power set is often used as all she can do is phase, and then it turns out she's the most powerful mutant around for some reason.
Look what Doom did. He's like, I know how your powers work better than you do. And just like, ah!
Yeah, I made her heavy as a stone. That was awesome. Like, I never even thought of it that way. Like, yeah, you can become lighter as air, but you're heavy as a stone. It does work. And I agree that, like, the last thing I'll say about the X-Men, too, is that, did you ever notice that, like, since House of X, Powers of 10, and now, like, this Fantastic Four book, it really isn't about the X-Men anymore. Like, did you really care that Cyclops was in the story? Or Wolverine? Or Emma Frost? Or anybody other than maybe Kitty Pryde? Was she the only other X-Men other than Magneto and Charles Xavier you gave a shit about in this book? Because I didn't care about any of it. Yeah. They were just people that were random jabronis getting, like, shot at by Doom's robots. That's it. They didn't have any personality. Like Wolverine drinks a couple beers. Who cares? Like,
and that's one of my issues with the X-Men books in general. And admittedly, I haven't gone too deep into them, but it's just too easy that all of the mutants would go along with Charles Xavier and Magneto in this story. Like, you would think Wolverine, of all people, would have more qualms.
Yes, that's why I think there's something going on with that helmet.
Yeah.
Now, although I will say that one of the most unnerving scenes in the whole book was when he took the helmet off to mind wipe Reed at the end, and his eyes were almost like blank or whatever, and I'm just like, put the helmet back on. Believe it or not, you're less creepy with the helmet on if that says anything. But yeah. Anyways, let's get final grades on X-Men plus Fantastic Four or whatever. J.A., what's your final grade on that?
I'd say I don't know. It's hard to just put one number on it because as I said, I wasn't a super fan of the art. I thought it was a bit too cartoony for me. So I'd probably put the art at a C. I'd put the writing at an A. I really loved, the dialogue and plot and overall storyline. I put that at a B plus. And just from a sort of enjoyable aspect, I mean, would I read it again? No, because everyone's a dick in it. I guess I have to say it's like a B minus. I don't know. It's a weird book to wrap my head around, I guess. It's some things I really liked about it. Like, I really liked Doom. I really liked that they started going into these issues with where, Professor X basically said every mutant on Earth has immunity, and Doom's like, yeah, no, I don't think so. And by the way, you're on Latveria. Get out of here. Which I was thinking back when they're, the Powers of 10 House of X series. But with the exception of Franklin and Kitty, everyone has no redeeming qualities. So I guess B minus.
All right, Chad.
I will stand up for the art. I love the Terry Dodson pencils and like that style of cartooning, and he's just so good at it. My only qualms is when you can tell they were messing around with various inkers here, and it wasn't all the Rachel Dodson. Like, there's some pages that get a little shaky, especially in that last issue, where it's like, oh, they were rushing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but I liked the art, the story. I enjoyed, and it's compelling, and it's so hard. You almost want to give this book an incomplete. And this is my issue with Hickman stories in general, because I know it's going to be 6 years. And at the end of 6 years, it's either going to be a really great story that everybody's going to, or a majority of people will love and be like, oh, you got to read it. Or they'll be like, not so much. They didn't hit the landing, and, you can skip it. I just feel like all this stuff is set up. And it's so hard for me to evaluate this as a story because it's not. This is just moving the chess pieces in place. Will I read this again? Yes. If the X-Men stuff pans out, when I'm reading that entire Hickman run at one time, like
in an omnibus.
No, he's one guy where I could see the omnibus format working. But like for now, like it was a fun story. It's not one I'm going to remember. After this week, really, other than Professor X is a dick and the X-Men are bad and look out, everybody's just going along with it. Even like Oro, like why is Storm? All the X-Men have been heroes for years. Why are all these heroes? It's like a betrayal.
I'm gonna again. I think I'm gonna mirror what you've said, Chad. That this is just a chapter in a long book. It's really hard to look at this 4-issue storyline and think of this as anything other than that. Like, this is just if you were watching this as a TV show, this is a single episode. Even though it was 4 issues, this is a single episode of this grand story that started in House of X, Powers of 10, and just continues through these other books. Whether, again, it's Hickman writing it or Chip Zdarsky who picks up the ball here and kind of moves those pieces a little bit forward in different areas. Ultimately, it is just kind of another setup piece for some sort of big payoff somewhere down the road. And I don't know what that payoff's going to be. I will say that this, again, reinforced the fact that these kind of books I will read. It made me want to go back and reread House of X, Powers of 10, which I did, because I was just like, you know what? This has regalvanized me into this whole storyline. I didn't read Marauders. I didn't read Excalibur. This was the first time I revisited this world, like, and these players again. since reading those first 12 issues. So it was nice to recapture that. And it's really nice to do that with Terry Dodson art. I love Terry Dodson. You know me. He's one of my favorite artists around, so I really did enjoy that. And Chip Zdarsky is always really good at just dialogue in general, like whether it was his run on Marvel 2-in-1, whether it's his run on Spider-Man Life Story, which he knows how to write good dialogue and things that just are memorable. Again, that Doom speech just jumps to mind, even though I can't remember it. But I think overall, I've got to give this, like, I don't know, I think I'll go with a B- as well, just simply because there wasn't much here. Like, at the end of the day, it was 4 issues, but there wasn't much. Like, Franklin goes to some Doom island, and a bunch of people are there, and some robots show up for a few seconds, and Doom almost steals his powers. Shrug.
Doom gets a little sliver. Valeria tips him off at the end. She's like, I know there was extra stuff in that suit. And I loved Doom. And they're like, Franklin Richards has these God particles, and they're like, Doom's like, no, they're Von Doom particles.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, but so if it is a B-, and I hope this pays off in the end. Like, I think overall, if this is another good chapter, and if this does stick the landing, this has the makings of one of the best X-Men stories I've ever read, just based on the fact of how many things they've shook up, as long as that ending sticks.
Yeah.
If they mess it up in the end, screw it. It's all been for naught. But if they hit it, this has been a wild ride, and I'm wondering what the end is going to be.
Yeah, I didn't give my grade. I'm going to give it a contingent B.
Okay.
I think this was good right now, but I reserve the right to go back and fail it later.
All right.
Or elevate it. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a bit of an incomplete. And at what point is Kitty Pryde going to go back to being called Kitty? I'm not on board with the whole Kate thing.
So that's the progression. Kitty Pryde and Franklin Richards, like, it's weird how Comic Time works. And for the longest time, Franklin Richards was always just like the kid. And for whatever reason, they've decided, no, we're going to age him up like they did with every other character. Superman's son was a kid for like 2 issues, and then he was 8 for a year and a half, and now he's 35. But like, I hate the way the time works in comics. And now Franklin, he dyed his hair so he looks like the Submariner, and all I can think about is that Tom Scioli Grand Design. I'm like, he's the Submariner's boy, isn't he?
It is true. He does look like Namor quite a lot. But no, it's interesting to just kind of piggyback off that idea, Chad. I think it's honestly because there are only certain ages that writers know what to do things with. Like, it's like this whole notion, like, why people don't have babies. Like, you can't give, like, you know, Mary Jane and Spider-Man babies, because it ages the characters, and then you don't know what to do with them. You're like, well, now they have responsibilities. Obviously, they can't run around outside anymore. And then you have a baby. How are you supposed to write a baby? Like, there's only so much you can do with it. Same thing with a toddler.
Franklin was always that way. He was always the wee little kid until like 2 years ago.
But you can tell a lot of good stories with teenagers. Teenagers got a lot of angst. You can tell good stories with them, so age them up. Age them to the point where you're like, yep, they're teenagers and they're mouthing off to their parents, because we all get that.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed our review of X-Men plus Fantastic Four by the wonderful Chip Zdarsky and Terry Dodson. Coming up right after these commercial breaks, more fantastic stuff from our archives as we try to put together our best team of X-Men. Stay tuned.
Interruption in progress. Now hijacking into ANS 2.0 immersion rig. Now simulating the Amazing Nerd Show. Featuring comics.
And Batman's like, you're safe here and everything, but the Joker all of a sudden pulls out a gun and shoots himself.
Movies.
People fight with lightsabers. What the hell do you want? I mean, in every one of these movies, there's a lightsaber battle.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna rewatch it a million times.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, give me something more.
Wrestling.
That would be awesome. Oh my god, just a monster. Fans would be like, holy, what the hell's going on? What happened to Jericho?
Horror.
It starts off like any other like home invasion type of story, and then it just goes crazy.
And more.
Hey, this is Christian.
Hey, this is Damon.
And we are the Amazing Nerd Show.
Make sure to download us on all your favorite podcast platforms.
Anyways, on the second half of today's program, we're going to have a quick segment because the first segment kind of went long, but it was hopefully you got some really great comic talk on that first segment. For the second segment, this is an idea that my brother Ethan came up with before he decided not to be on the show. He's like, oh, by the way, I've got something else going on, but you should do this as a segment. And I said, okay. What's your idea? And he's like, remember when we did the X-Men draft? And I said, yeah, I remember when we did the X-Men draft. And he's like, nobody else does. And I said, yeah, it's true. Like, that did happen like 2 years ago, even though J.A. will still crow about how he won.
He totally won that one.
But on that show, we did a draft of X-Men characters, and I think we're going to bring that idea back. We're going to do a little mini draft, and as a result of that, I thought that we would, as the kind of caveat or twist to this particular segment is we're going to do another X-Men draft, but given that we reviewed the Fantastic Four on today's program, what do you think of when you think of the Fantastic Four, but teamwork? The Fantastic Four are actually better as a group than they are individually. They function better. They have powers that kind of accentuate each other. And so therefore, they're a better group than they are individuals. And so
and they're the one group that's never had anybody other than the Thing carry a title for very long.
That's true. They have to stay together. So on today's program, we're going to do a draft, an X-Men draft, in which you have to draft 4 members of your X-Men team. But they have to be Fantastic Four-esque in that in drafting them, you have to actually think about, okay, how would they interact with the other members of their team? How would they balance each other out? And yes, my team at the end, I can make the solid argument that they are better as a group than they are individually. That means maybe Wolverine doesn't really work for your team idea. Maybe he is too powerful to be on an X-Men team. It doesn't have to be a team that sells books. It has to be a team that functions well. And so on today's program, we're going to go ahead and do this draft because obviously, like anything else, once somebody's been drafted, they are off the board, and it's going to be a traditional snake draft, unlike some of our auction drafts that we've done in the past. So J.A. gets to go first, Chad second, me third, and then we will rope around until we've picked all 4 characters for our teams. So J.A., with the first pick in this X-Men Draft 2020, who have you taken for your team?
I'm going to fill out my Sue Storm pick. This is the gel that keeps the team together and the secret, super strong, powered one of them all, and that will be Kitty Pryde. Not Kate, Kitty Pryde.
Okay. So she is kind of your glue, your secretly superpowered one. And I think that's a good pick for that particular spot because oftentimes, like Sue Storm, she has been somebody that's been overlooked. But then she's in these awesome comic books, and it's really hard to not overlook her in those comic books. So, Chad, you are up with your first pick. Who's that going to be?
Ha-ha! I am excited about this. So my pick, I'm going to go with one of those salt of the earth kind of guys like the Thing. You know, he's a bruiser, he's a brawler, and he's going to sell all the books. It's Wolverine with my second pick.
All right. So we got Kitty Pryde, we've got Wolverine. I think for my particular pick, you know, just because I think Chad's going to want him, and I think he's a good guy. And if you're not going to have a Human Torch, who are you going to have? Who could really be that elemental power that you could keep on a team? I'm going to go with Iceman. I think Iceman's going to be my first pick. Those ice powers, having Omega level mutants on your team is never a bad thing. And again, like the Human Torch, I think it balances out with kind of some projectile, a lot of different uses for Iceman. And of course, because I took Iceman, I got to have somebody to balance out Iceman. So, like, if I'm going with an elementals and I've got ice as one, obviously for the second pick, I'm going to take Firestar.
Oh, you're doing the Amazing Friends.
Well, at least 2 of them. I mean, if I'm going to balance off a team, obviously I have fire and I need to have ice. So I need to have the yin and the yang of that. And I think that's going to be kind of where my team is going, in which two halves of these teams are going to be kind of yin and yangs of each other. I could have picked Sunfire, but nobody cares about Sunfire, to be honest. I could have picked Pyro. Nobody cares about him. I actually thought about Phoenix for a little while because she's got fire powers, and she would also be an Omega level mutant. But I can't get away from Firestar. Firestar is where it's at. And if I can take those two off the board before Chad gets them, I'm already ahead of the game.
You just still have a crush on Firestar from that cartoon. Anyway, anytime I think of the X-Men, I'm going to go with my secondary only to Iceman, who's the coolest X-Men. My favorite power set. And this is going to be the guy that's going to function in my Mr. Fantastic role as the brains of the operation, somebody who's going to be able to stretch himself into a number of different situations to solve a variety of problems, somebody who's going to be able to make the most of what's around. It's Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man.
Okay.
And I'm going to play into his power set and make him something formidable. Sort of like the old Peter David Madrox Detective Agency. You know, he's still a bit of a screw up, but like he has a lot of potential, and I'd like to explore that. I think that'd be fun.
All right. J.A., you're up with your second pick.
So with my second pick, this is going to fill out the Mr. Fantastic portion of my team, the leader and someone who can overcome adversity and through either intelligence or their power set, able to both pull the group and keep the group together, but also determine what they're going to do, and that is going to be Storm.
Oh, okay.
Well played.
Thank you.
Now you get Mohawk Storm, or is it just regular Storm, or what?
That's the beauty of it. She can be Mohawk Storm. She can be depowered Storm. She can be Goddess of the Earth Storm. That's what makes her such a good pick for the Mr. Fantastic role. She can have all those multiple facets when you're putting the book together.
All right, you're back on the clock with your next pick, J.A. Now it's your third pick.
Okay, well, sometimes, especially in a Fantastic Four book, you're going to just need someone who can just pound nails. There's no answer but pure physical strength, and we're going to get some smashing done. As Thing was wont to say, it's clobbering time. Well, when you're an X-Men and you need to clobber something, who better to call than Colossus?
Oh, see, it's a nice little team you've got here.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to do you one better if I can get around to my pick here. But, Chad, you're on the clock.
All right. So with my pick, the way I always look at the Fantastic Four, I look at them as like elementals. You know, you have the fire of Johnny Storm. You have the earth of the Thing. You have Mr. Fantastic, whose stretchiness is like the air. And Sue Storm is like the water, the one that can expand to fill whatever role she needs to. You know, it's the old Bruce Lee thing. You know, when you pour water into a glass, water becomes the glass. And so I need somebody who's flexible, somebody who's fluid. And I also want to carry on the tradition of the X-Men and, you know, having a strong female presence. So I'm going to bring on Rogue.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, I didn't want to go with any of the... I considered the mind-powered mutants, but I don't like those guys. They freak me out. So I'm just going to go with Rogue.
So very rich. Be water, sugar.
All right. So I'm up on the clock with my last two picks, and I am going with the Fantastic Four being like that. There are certain facets that they have to fill. This whole notion of the elements. So I've got my fire, I've got my ice, or pretty much water. So I've got my fire, I've got my water. I need my earth, and as J.A. pointed out again. You need a bruiser, you need a tank, you need somebody that'll just take the damage. And there is somebody that takes a heck of a lot more damage than Colossus ever did. And that's why my bruiser, my tank, is one of the best in the business. That's Juggernaut. Juggernaut is my big bruiser on my team. And you know what? When you have him, as I went with fire and ice, you've got the body and now you got to have the mind. So you got the body and the mind, the dichotomy between the two, and you also have to have that leader, that manipulator, that person that knows what to do, and to kind of, you know, put that team on a tangent that's going to work. And that's why my last pick will be Emma Frost. So I've got Emma Frost, Juggernaut, Firestar, Iceman. That's my team. I got them all. And I think that's a great, great team. I think they balance each other out. They've got mental powers. They've got physical strength. They've got ice. They've got fire. It's a great team. Chad, you're up.
All right. So far, I have Wolverine as my earthy guy. I've got Madrox filling that Mr. Fantastic role. Rogue is my water, who can become whatever she needs to become. So I need that fiery spirit. I need that guy who's going to charge headfirst into a situation. I need a guy who's nigh invulnerable when he's blasting. I need a guy like Cannonball. Guthrie. I couldn't remember how to say his name. Sam Guthrie Cannonball is going to be my final pick for my X-Men team.
Very nice. All right, J.A., you're up with your last pick. So I think I've shown you up on this thus far, but I don't know. Let's see what you pull out with your last one.
You guys have nothing. Okay, I've got water in my Kitty Pryde. I've got air with Storm, and earth is obviously Colossus. So now I need my fire pick. And this is the person that is going to bring an element of surprise, an element of instantaneous change to the team, someone who will look different and be able to attack the enemies from all angles.
I think he's going another bad guy route, or another bad gal, I should say.
No.
Oh,
but I'm interested. We're gonna stay, and when we're putting this team together as a Photoshop group, I won't have to go very far. I'll just go straight to my John Byrne X-Men, pull out Nightcrawler.
Okay. Nightcrawler, nice. I thought you were going to say Mystique.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes, that would have been good too.
I totally thought you were going with Mystique until but Nightcrawler as your last pick. So really, in essence, yeah, you're right. You just picked the Byrne X-Men. You got it's like minus Cyclops, minus Wolverine. It's pretty much everybody else.
For me, Wolverine doesn't work because he's an independent contractor as much as he is a member of the team. They were always the core team of the X-Men. So I really focused on the Fantastic Four being a family, and these were the core family members: Colossus, Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, Storm. They are so interconnected from a personal relationship perspective. That's where I really focused on the fact that all four of them have such strong relationship ties to each other, familial ties almost. I mean, that they will do anything for each other.
Very cool. Chad, so he just sold his book as Playing Up the Family. How are you selling your book?
Mine's all about personality. It's the thing Fantastic Four's never had. I mean, I've got the screw-up leader with Madrox. I love his power set. I love that he can be all things and just send out dupes everywhere and, stumble across dupes. I've got the fiery, Wolverine and calling people Bub. Like, you got to have a book where somebody's called Bub. And then Rogue, who calls people Sugar. And Cannonball, who also has that little southern inflection there. I just think my book is going to be about these personalities colliding and giving you that earned, found family relationship that you had with the Fantastic Four, with the Thing and Johnny Storm always clashing. I think there's a lot of room here for these characters because deep down, Cannonball as a character, he's the heart and soul of the team. Wolverine is a character that, as much as he puts on a gruff exterior and says Bub, he really wants to be there. He could have left the X-Men at any time, but he just keeps showing up. But all these people, they're misfits finding a place to belong. They're going to belong together. And so that's the family route that I'm going with, that found family experience. I think it should be lots of fun.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going with my book if I haven't mentioned it before. I think my book is kind of playing off a different aspect of the Fantastic Four that we didn't even talk about, which is the fact that when Galactus comes knocking, it's oftentimes not the X-Men or the Avengers that call and answer the call. It's the Fantastic Four. They're usually the first line of defense. Why? Because they're used to dealing with these problems the first time and meeting them head on, and they're so powerful and their forces intertwine so well that they are oftentimes the first line of Earth's defense. And so I'm really focusing my X-Men book on being the first line of defense. Like, what if it's like a what if book? Like, what if there wasn't a Fantastic Four and the X-Men had to meet that call instead? So you have basically Emma Frost leading a group of extremely powerful people. In fact, I'm going to throw it out there that the reason why Firestar is on the team is because not only does she meet my rookie, but she's also actually the new recipient of the Phoenix powers. Yeah, that's what I said. Bam! She's got fire powers and she's got Phoenix powers. I'm making her a Phoenix In my
Does the
book,
Phoenix microwave things?
sure. Now she does. She's always fire-based. I'm loving it. She's got the powers now. They're trying to teach her how to use this. So you got Iceman, you got Juggernaut, you got Firestar with the Phoenix powers, you got Emma Frost leading the whole group, and they're fighting people like Galactus, the Shire that are coming knocking. They're the ones that are the first line of defense. That's my book, baby. That's my book. And I love it. Buy those issues of the Extraordinary X-Men. That's what we'll call it. I think there was one. Wasn't there a book called Extraordinary X-Men? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was. It's probably Ordinary X-Men.
In any case, that's our team draft for today. Just to kind of recap again. X-Men. You have J.A. He took Kitty Pryde, Storm, Colossus, and Nightcrawler. You have Chad, who took Cannonball, Rogue,
Wolverine, and Madrox, the Multiple Man.
And then you had me. I took Emma Frost, Juggernaut, Firestar, and Iceman as my group.
So just to point out, the only team that you actually remembered was my team.
You're in his head, J.A. You're in his head.
Oh, he's probably gonna win this one too. But anyways, make sure that you go out to our social media, vote for who you thought would have the best team out of the three of us on this in the upcoming week, and we'll have the results on a later show. I hope you go out there and pick up Chip Zdarsky and Terry Dodson's Fantastic Four Plus X-Men or X-Men Plus Fantastic
X-Men
Four.
Plus Fantastic Four.
There you go. It's available not only in issues but in trade paperback, and you can pick that up now.
One thing that never came up in the House of X Powers of 10 review or today is the fact that when Wolverine dies, killing the Master Mold, and then is recloned, he wouldn't have any of his adamantium. Because that's not a mutant thing. That's a man-made thing. So how do they jive that? That's a big plot hole.
I'm sure Hickman has a chart to answer that. There's lots of circles and lines.
I want to see the chart. I want to see the chart.
All right. Well, that's all the time we had for the Last Comic Shop this week. I hope you enjoyed taking a look back into the Last Comic Shop past and those fantastic comic book reviews from our archives. And if you enjoyed this, make sure that you follow along and rate our show on all of your favorite podcatching platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, etc. And if you love our show, make sure that you help us out by leaving that 5-star review. Especially if you enjoy some of these archive shows. Leave us some comments and let us know that you'd like to hear more of these past shows in future. And you can also find us on our social media to continue the conversation at Twitter and Instagram at Last Comic Shop and via the web at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. And until next week, stay safe, stay sheltered, and remember, we'll see you in the funny pages.
The Last Comic Shop was a 2021 Black Angus production.